All right. They said, what time is it? We're going to say buff time. What time is it?
Time.
Buff time. Let's go, baby. It is the BuffTime Podcast with BiggDogg Chico and Brian Howell of Buff Zone. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How you doing, Chico?
I've been making it. We got through another week of spring practice, practice number 8 with another practice coming up, number 9 on Saturday, where the media won't have access to it. But tell us, about the access that you guys did have this past week and how everything went. We saw, of course, interviews from Coach Mathis, Coach Hart last week, and a couple of players. So give us a quick recap of what you were able to see out there.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm just glad you have your internet back, so you don't have to do this from your car.
Right.
So if anybody saw the first one, that's why he was doing it from his car, because the internet was not working at home. But
Right.
this week was a good week because we got I love talking to the assistants because you get to learn more about their position groups and get a little insight on that. And so earlier this week, we got a chance to talk to Coach Flea, the running backs coach, Gary Harrell, and learn a lot about the running backs. I thought it was a really insightful day, actually. We talked to him as well as Dylan Edwards and Micah Welch. And, when we did our first podcast earlier this week, we talked about running backs, and it was interesting because we talked about some of the things we could see Dylan doing, and then Dylan came out the next day and said, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. So, it was good to hear from that. I think the biggest thing, and we'll discuss it more, but like Coach Harrell talking about there's more commitment to the run. And I thought it was insightful. He said, look, there wasn't a whole lot of times last year we called a straight run. It was all RPOs, and this year we're going to do that. And so I thought that was big. I think not unexpected with Pat Shurmur that would be the case. But so that was a good day on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, Coach Mathis and also DJ McKinney, the Oklahoma State transfer. And it was great to get Mathis because, we haven't talked to him since his introductory press conference like last February or March. We were supposed to get him a couple times last year, but it's not his favorite thing to do, talking to the media. But he was great. He was really good with us and gave us a lot of insight to the cornerback position and secondary in general. So I thought this week was a really good week as far as learning about those two position groups specifically.
Yes, indeed. And like to go back for a minute, the running back position and Coach Flea and what he said, and also I saw a couple of clips of Alton McCaskill getting through there looking like a big Clydesdale, so to speak, running through those holes, man. Who wants to hit a big 6'1" running back running right at you like this? And he's fully healthy. It looks like it, and he looks like he has that full confidence. Dylan Edwards going to be all over the field from the slot to the backfield. Savion Wilkerson, that steady horse is ready to go when he's called upon. But then you have the freshman Michael Welch, who is really, really looking good out there, scoring touchdowns, bouncing off people, running the ball strong, powerful. So you got a lot of competition back there. And, of course, Coach Prime loves Charlie Offerdahl, and he's only going to continue to run hard and be that spark plug back in the backfield. So I love the commitment to the run for Coach Pat Shurmur. Yeah. Overall, I said that I think it's only going to help Deion Sanders in his case at the end of the day for the Heisman, because if you look back in history, the Heisman wins games and puts up numbers.
Yep.
And a friend of winning games for a quarterback is the running game, and that's what we must utilize, especially if we have the guys to do it back there.
Yeah, you don't often see at any level quarterbacks that put up a lot of numbers but don't have any help with the run game, and then win games. That doesn't really happen in football, and so you've got to have that run game, and that was the biggest thing that held this offense back last year was they just didn't have that threat. And I thought Coach Flea's comments were insightful in that he basically said there was never. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said there wasn't that commitment to the run that there's going to be this year. I love that under Coach Shurmur. I think they need that. And, Alton McCaskill, you mentioned him. He's a guy that I think a lot of people, especially nationally, won't think about him because it's now been 2 years since he really played football. And you have to go all the way back to 2022 to remember Alton McCaskill, but almost 1,000-yard back as a true freshman, but really has not played football the last 2 years. And so people are going to forget about him. But man, he's a good running back, and he's got the ability to be that 1,000-yard back. I don't know what their carry load is going to be if he'll have the carries to get to 1,000 yards, but he'll be that productive in my opinion. And then Micah Welch, we've talked about him the last time, but but man, the way he's coming out, he's that bowling ball running back, that Emmitt Smith body type that Coach Prime loves, and he's making a good impression. Dylan Edwards, as you and I talked about before, like we'd like to see him split out more. He mentioned the other day, well, I'm playing more receiver now. Well, I love that. And then Savion Wilkerson is another guy that people forget about, but 2 years ago he was 1,000-yard back. At Jackson State, and so it. And then Charlie Offerdahl, it's hard for me to. That's an interesting one in that I don't. He gets a lot of attention, but then the carries aren't there in game time because he's a walk-on, and so sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know how much time to spend on talking about him because I don't know how much he'll play. But then every time you see him practice, it's like, Charlie Offerdahl, he's pretty good. So I would love, and he's a great kid, and so I would love to see him get the opportunity. So I don't know how much they'll use him or not, but that's 5 running backs they have that you're like, okay, that's a pretty good group.
Yeah, just throw them in there and let them ball out. But at the end of the day, you will have to have those guys blocking up front. And we've been hearing rumblings of a couple of guys who may be entering the portal. Are there names you want to put out there that could be entering the portal right now? I know that is a holdover or two from last year. Of course, Big Savion is still there at the right tackle position. But we'll see how it plays out on offensive line. I'm sure Coach Prime is still looking to make improvements to continue to up that line in front of, so that you can't touch two for real. Don't touch two. Hopefully they won't allow people to touch two, but it's still going to be looking to add people on that offensive line. Who are some guys who you think may be entering that transfer portal?
Yeah, it's hard to say. And real quick, I want to correct myself because I said all the way back in 2022 is when McCaskill was almost 1,000-yard rusher. That was 2021. So it's been even longer.
Wait, hold up. 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, because 22 was the year he was out at Houston, and then last year didn't play a whole lot. So
exactly.
It's hard to say who's going to go into the portal. It's going to be interesting to see what those guys are thinking because, there's some guys that just got here in January and you get here and think, I'm going to be a starter. Well, then if you go through spring and you're not that, I could see some guys moving on, and that's the hard part about the portal era is it's hard to have quality depth because good players don't want to sit. And, and so, so far, like we're not seeing Savion Washington go with that first team right now. And so is that a guy that decides, you know what, I'm going to go in the portal. He could go play for Sean Lewis at San Diego State. I don't know what he's thinking, but that's a name to me to keep an eye on. Some of those guys that are holdovers from last year that maybe they're not going to play a whole lot, and Isaiah Jada, some of those guys, Kareem Harden, some of those guys that maybe didn't play a lot last year, and it looks like they may not play this year. Do they move on as well? Tyler Brown, is he a guy that, does he get that starting spot? I don't see him moving on.
Going nowhere.
I agree, but I guess what I'm saying with him is like, I'm curious to see if he's going to be a starter. I don't mean to put him in the transfer portal talk, but I'm curious to see where he lands as far as that starting lineup goes. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that group because they've got a lot of starting ability and starting experience. But how many of those guys want to stick around if they aren't starters coming out of spring?
Yeah, but also, like you said, some of the guys who didn't play a lot, I can understand that. But if you're a guy that came in January, man, I think you still should be having a mindset of I'm trying to go for that starting spot. I just got to continue to learn the playbook and keep going after it. I think I could get in that starting spot. But you had a couple linemen there that was on campus that you were able to speak to that played over. We call them forever buffs on that offensive line, and they said they were pretty impressed with what they've seen out there. I'll tell you what I've been impressed with, and that is just to see Jordan Seaton working with the first unit as a 17, 18-year-old grown man out there and just playing the part and looking the part. I've been impressed with that. Justin Mayers at the guard position, Hank Zelinskas at the center spot, doing this thing. Tyler Brown being a strong rock at the right guard, and then Khalil Benson at the right tackle spot. Now, we've been seeing him move around a lot. Are they comfortable with him at the right tackle? Are they confident with him at the right tackle to put him there and keep him there? or do they want to keep shifting him around to see where they feel better at, and are they looking to bring in another bookend right tackle or left tackle? We'll see in the future, but what is your take on those guys?
Yeah, and you mentioned the linemen. There was three forever Buff linemen that were there. Jeremy Irwin, I talked to. He was the left tackle for the Buffs several years ago, and a pretty good one. I think he was all conference
Yeah,
second team or honorable mention. And he told me, I didn't even ask about Jordan Seaton, but he said, "Man, he goes, that kid's impressive." He goes, "I didn't really expect a whole lot as a true that him being a true freshman, but seeing him out there live, he goes, that kid is really impressive." And the other two linemen, Alex Kelly, Jonathan Huckins. Alex Kelly was the starting center for 3-4 years, and Huckins played a lot of guard, and they were both talking about the offensive line looks pretty good, and that they're impressed by those guys, just seeing them live. And so that's good to hear from actual linemen,
yeah,
and not just me, but actual guys that play the position, and not too long ago for this school, to say, wow, these guys look pretty good. And they're also saying last year it didn't look good, and this year it does. And Dylan Edwards too was asked this week, and he made a point. He said, I'm not going to dog on my guys from last year, because they were my guys too, but he
yeah.
mentioned that it feels like this group is closer, and he gave them a lot of praise. So just everything you're hearing about the offensive line is that it's an upgrade, and that's what it needs to be. And so we have to hear that. We need to hear that.
And shouts out to Dylan Edwards for having that mindset. Those still my guys. I'm not trying to down them or anything of that nature. So shouts out to Big Deal on that. I will tell you this though, like you said, seeing it and hearing it from an offensive lineman who's played that position and knowing what he's looking at, it's the same way that I've been seeing on the Well Off Media videos and Rich People and Deep Pregame Show with the defensive line now. Because apparently, and I haven't seen the official news, maybe I missed it, but apparently it looks like Coach Sal isn't there, and that defensive line is being ran by, look like, Coach D. Lewis, Warren Sapp, and on the ends, Coach Vincent Dancy. Now, from what I've been seeing, it looks like it's exactly what they need on a defensive line, for someone to be in their face, but from a standpoint of, I've been there and I've done it. I'm telling you what you need to be looking for. I'm telling you the mindset. I'm telling you what I want to see. I'm not just going to, I'm going to damn near demonstrate it and show you what I want to see and expect to see it. And those guys, I can tell you from a player point perspective, that when you have an NFLer out there telling you what to do from that perspective, you want to do it and you want to get that reaction. You want to impress them. So I've been really impressed by that defensive line, and I'm super excited to see how much they improve play by play, game by game on the defensive line, just going and having that mindset, knowing that, hey, I'm in there for 3 plays and I'm out. I got Warren Sapp watching me and I'm out. I got D. Lewis watching me and I'm out. What have been your thoughts on the defensive line so far?
Yeah, and there has been no official news, but Coach Sal, I know, has been dealing with some health stuff, and so it has been Lewis and Sapp running things there, and those guys are responding. And I know from talking to some of those guys as they came in, some of those new guys coming in over the winter, that and Sapp wasn't even there yet, but just the thought of Warren Sapp potentially being there got them excited, and they knew at the very least. Sapp was a friend of Coach Prime and would be showing up sometimes, and that got them excited. And so I think it matters to those guys when you're hearing from a Hall of Famer. And I remember this is not defensive line, but like last year when T.O. Would come visit Boulder, and there was days that we're kind of waiting at the end of practice for press conferences to start, and Javon Antonio is walking up the hill with T.O. and just picking his brain, and other receivers doing that. And that means a lot to those guys when they can talk to players that have done it. And Coach Prime mentions it, but it's real. These guys want to hear it from guys that have played the position and done it. And so I think that those guys are responding to that. The defensive line, from everything we're hearing, they're playing a lot better.
Yes, indeed. Shouts out to who I've been looking at: Amari McNeil, Chidozie Nwankwo, Anquan Barnes, Tarion Carter, J.J. Hawkins, Chaz Wallace, all the big guys up there, including the defensive ends too. But I've really been focused on the defensive tackle. Shane Coates been in there getting in the mix also. Big Woda. Gosh, I forget the big number 98's name, but they're out there and they're looking good on that defensive line. I'm not sure if they're going to we're going to be adding more there. But I'm from the school of you could never have too many defensive line and ready and willing defensive tackles on your football team at any point.
Yeah, and I think Amari McNeil is a guy that I think was underrated from last year. Coming in from Tennessee and didn't really play a lot at Tennessee, but I thought he had a really good year and didn't get a lot of attention for it because just in general the defense wasn't great and the line as a whole was not great. But I thought he had a good year last year. I expect him to be much better. And Shane Coates, at least as you're watching him in some of these practice films, look like that year of experience. Being up to the FBS level is paying off for him. And, I think some people forget that that's a big jump from Ivy League to Power 5. And he was talked about last year, but didn't produce a lot. I expect more out of Shane Coates this year as well. And so,
what? Not to cut you off, but speaking of Shane Coates, what I think he's going to benefit from also because, he was playing a lot of multiple different positions, maybe out of position a little bit, especially making that jump so fast. I think he's going to benefit from another year in the weight room, learning the defense, getting back in his natural position, and the key thing is having Warren Sapp and D. Lewis in his face. Yep. He respects that. I just feel like those guys are responding to that a little bit more than they might be responding to. And no disrespect to Coach Sal or any other coach, but I just feel like it's just the time and the moment is right for these guys to be coached by the ones who they're being coached by right now.
Well, and I also think one other thing that's going to help Shane is that he's got better players and more experience around him. And I think last year there was he was kind of the experienced guy, but he wasn't the experienced at this level. And maybe there was leaning on him too much. But, when you got guys that have already done it at this level and they're around you, that helps you too. So I just think Shane – I think the development of Amari McNeil last year is going to help him. I think Chidozie coming in here, experience is going to help him. And so, BJ Green's not even here yet, but guys like that, are going to help Shane Coates look a lot better this year and make him. And that's with every player in every sport, right? You look better when you've got better people around you, and right. That whole term "iron sharpens iron." It's true because better players make you look better, and that's just the case. I don't care what sport it is, but I think Shane's going to look better because that line is better.
Badass BJ Green is what I'm gonna call him, coming off that end, and he's going to be paired with some guys who I've been impressed with also, and that's Tajay McCoy coming off that end. Using those hands, being quick, fast, and in a hurry. We saw some sparks from him last year, but this year, like in practice, I think it's going to be his year to come off that end and really make a name for himself. I think the other one will be BJ Green. That's the bookend. Once he gets here or in Colorado in May, I think defensive line is looking like they're going to be up to the test to lead this and really be the catalyst, set the tone for the defense up front. That's where it starts at. That attitude, that defensive line up front, and having that rotation in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one name to not forget is Arden Walker, and he's out right now.
Yep.
He's not participating this spring because of the thumb. I think it was a thumb injury, and so he's out all spring. But I think he's ready for a breakout year. He's a guy that paid his dues at Missouri. And when I talked to him last year, he said people don't understand that's a hard position to excel at as a young player, and so he kind of paid his dues there. And then last year got a little bit better. I think he's due for a breakout season as well. So I think the competition on the edge is going to be really good this summer when you get a guy like Arden back in there as well.
Shouts out to the Colorado native, Arden
That's right.
Walker.
And, there's not a lot of them on this team, but he's one of them.
Yeah, and legacy buffs too, because his dad, Big Art Walker, was a great there also. So, and also one more guy I like to mention is Kyrie Mans. I saw they're doing pretty well. Number 41 came over from Maine, the New York native. Shouts out to him. And let me see here. Who am I missing out there I need to mention?
Samuel Kunalola from Pitt.
Kunalola.
Yeah.
He's going to be
a guy that really kind of started making a name for himself at Pitt last year. I think he's going to be a guy that gets in there. If he can even duplicate what he did last year with a handful of sacks, with some of the other guys getting a handful of sacks, I'm not sure there's going to be a 10-sack guy on this team. But if you've got a handful of guys that are getting 4 and 5, that's what you need. I think you're okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, we like a 10 sack guy, but
Right.
just don't think that this defense is is geared around or kind of dependent on that one person to do it. I think it's more of a team thing. And yes, I see in the chat y'all saying Quincy Wiggins also out of LSU. He's
Yep.
another one that has that potential. Just want to see him reach that full level and really understand how good he can be. I think he's maybe in the mode of like Amari McNeil was, in my opinion, because Amari McNeil, like you said, didn't play a lot at Tennessee, but there's so much talent at Tennessee. Like even when I played, I remember playing against them, and the backup tight end was on special teams, and I was like, "Who is this big fella right here?" But he never touched the field on offense, But he just looked like a somebody chiseled him out of a piece of stone or something, So you have a lot of guys at schools like that are backups that never get a chance to play, and then they can grad or transfer like Amari McNeil and Quincy Wiggins did. Now they can kind of spread their wings and blossom. And I think Wiggins has that talent and ability. Will he just put it all together with the mindset and take over like he can? I think so.
And I kind of look at it to put it in a basketball term. A lot of times coaches will say they'll look at a score sheet, a stat sheet at the end of the game, and say, "Man, I love seeing this. We don't have anybody with 30 points. We got people with 10, 9, 8, 12." And I think that when it comes to sacks, I'd almost rather have 5 or 6 guys that are in that 4 to 6 range in sacks, as opposed to one guy that has 12 and then your next guy has 3. And so I think that that's going to be the benefit to this team. That's what I see out of this team is balance, and where there's not one dominant pass rusher, but you can bring in and rotate guys, and you got 5 or 6 guys that can go get the quarterback.
I totally agree. It makes it way more dangerous. Offense can't, key on one person. You never know where they're going to come from. So that will be huge if we can have that production from the defensive line. Also from the linebacker spot, whether they're blitzing or covering. We saw Coach Mathis kind of hit on Trevor Woods, right? Coming down from safety to play linebacker, and his coverage ability along with Marion Cooper on the tight ends and running backs. And that way that can free up possibly the Mike linebacker to do some blitzing and shooting some gaps and making some plays on the other side of the ball, which I'm excited about also, because I felt like we didn't do enough of that last year or even have the opportunity to do it. So this year, still looking like Levante Bentley will be starting there, or at least he's penciled in along with Trevor Woods. But then you got competition back there with Wester, Jeremiah Brown, and B. Gant, and a couple of others. How do you feel like that linebacker room will be shaping out from what you've been hearing and seeing?
Yeah, that's an interesting room because I don't think it's gonna be the only spot, but that's the first spot I look at and say they're gonna add there. I think that second starting linebacker, it might be Trevor Woods, but it might be someone that's not in Boulder yet. I think that's a spot that they, I would feel much better. And I love Trevor Woods as a player. I'm still a little skeptical about him as a linebacker because he's sort of undersized. I love him as a safety, but I still think you need, even if it's those two, I don't know who that third guy is, and I'd like to see someone else come in. Brendan Gant is a talented kid, but he's dealt with some injuries, and so I want to see somebody else come in. So I could see that second guy being someone that's not there yet. And so Levante Bentley, though, I was impressed with the way he responded last year. He started the year, and then oh my gosh, what's the name? The kid that came in from ASU, Juwan Mitchell, Juju. He comes in there, kind of takes this starting spot, and then has his issues, and Levante takes back over. Levante had a great season, the rest of the year, and that defense, was not great, but he put up some numbers, and lots of TFLs. He got some sacks, and so I'm excited about his development. And it was only his first year as a starter, even though he's a 6th-year player now. So I like him, but I do think that that's a spot they're going to hit the portal and find somebody else.
Yeah, I think if you can add another thumper back there.
Yep.
I think that'd be good. A good run defense guy, probably around 235 pounder. One of those guys that's a linebacker once he walks off the bus. Okay, that's a big head linebacker, right? Big head, big shoulders.
And I do think I will say I think Trevor Woods brings a lot of value too, and I think that there's that
Yeah.
unique skill set he has, and so I don't necessarily think it's gonna be someone that it's instead of Trevor, but I think that I like having some more rotation in there. I don't know how deep that group is right now, just because we haven't seen some of those guys, but Trevor's going to get in there. I love Trevor.
And you got to take into consideration you lost a guy who they thought was going to really be contributing this year with DK DeMore Kennedy from Alabama, thinking that he was going to. So you got to think you might have to fill in someone, not just somebody who might play Trevor's spot or might play Bentley's spot. Just give us a linebacker who could play high-level football, who can make tackles, who has a track record from it. I did see a guy come out of Middle Tennessee, either Middle Tennessee or Tennessee State. I think it was Middle Tennessee that put up major numbers on that level. So we'll see. I always say a linebacker, if he can play, he can play no matter what level, and those stats will be there. If he can get to the ball carrier, those stats will be there, and you can tell no matter what level.
And don't forget too that they thought they had DJ Lundy coming as well, and and then he changed his mind, and so they kind of thought they had that solidified.
I know this is a long shot, but I always say this. What if DJ prematurely put his name in there, or prematurely committed, but he's like, oh damn, now this is just a guess now. He's like, oh damn, I do have to finish school by May, and then I can go in the transfer portal. It
also could have been. Remember back, at that time, Florida State was kind of losing a lot of guys to the portal, and Adam and I have talked about this. That it could have been some Florida State boosters saying, "Wait a minute, we better go get some of those guys back," and say, "Hey, DJ, you know what? Here's a little money if you want to come back and just stay here." And DJ says, "Yeah, I think Florida State sounds good."
I'll think about it. Yeah, I think it sounds a lot better now than.
And it's all speculation, but something happened to where he changed his mind fairly quickly, and so that was a guy I was excited about him for about 3 days when he was committed. So they thought they had that solidified, but that's why I think they're still going to get somebody else. And remember, they got DJ when they still thought Demoy was going to be there, and so. You were adding DJ to Des Moines. Now you don't have either one, and so I do think that's a spot they might get one or two guys.
Going to hit that spot heavy and hard, I think, in the portal. If not for anything, for some depth back there and rotational pieces. Got a few minutes left here. You guys get in the chat. Let us know what you think. Leave a like, subscribe, comment. Make sure you subscribe to Ryan's page, also on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Y'all see the handles right up there at the top. This new podcast that we do have called BuffTime. Y'all make sure y'all hashtag BuffTime when you're sharing this. As we're going to go to, let's go to our last positions of the day, which would be the DBs that we could talk about. Shout out to the specs. We'll get to y'all next time on the next show in the other spots. Wide receiver also. But with the DBs, we saw Coach Kevin Mathis come on with his press run. We also saw DJ McKinney, who looks like he might be, cornerback number one in this scheme. Or technically maybe two, with Travis still being one over the slots because of how you broke it down. But talk about what you heard Coach Mathis say. And real quick, I will say this, though. He did say, like you said earlier, but Coach Mathis said exactly what I was saying about Travis covering the slot and seeing him in that slot, which is most teams now have their number one receiver as the slot guy, not the outside guy. So if we can be comfortable with those guys outside and Travis on the slot, which is the spot that we were really getting killed on last year on the slot, on the crossing and the slant routes. Put Travis there and bring in two other guys who we're comfortable with on the outside and work them out there and let them defend those longer throws from the quarterback. Yeah,
how many times did we watch CU last year and say, do they know how to cover a crossing route? And like it was insane last year, that a couple of those games. But Travis, it was interesting to hear that because he's always been that outside guy. But I thought the more interesting thing was Coach Mathis talking about Travis sticking his nose in there in the B gap and making some plays down there. It sort of reminded me, as he's talking like that, I'm thinking Chido Awuzie, who's where did he sign? Is he still with the Bengals? I can't remember where he signed. I think he just signed with somebody else.
Probably. I can check it out. I'll have to look.
He did sign somewhere else. I can't remember where it is. But anyway, he's one of the best corners we've seen around here in a long time, and he played in that slot. and made some plays. And I think he still holds the CU record for most sacks by a DB. So he made a lot of plays there. So I'm curious to see what Travis does. But I think you can only do that because you've got guys like DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge that are stepping up. And, Cormani's just getting back into the mix. We're not sure what to expect out of Cormani, but the fact you got DJ McKinney, who looks really good, and Preston Hodge there, kind of gives you that luxury of moving Travis around a little bit. And if you've got all three of those guys on the field, and Preston Hodge played for an undefeated Liberty team last year, so we can't forget that. He was a starter on that team. DJ McKinney was not a quote starter, but played starter type plays. Really good young player, and so I love this secondary group.
Me too. I love how interchangeable they are. That's going to bring that versatility for this defense, and the more creative that I think Coach Rob Livingston can be, is going to make us a lot more dangerous back there in the backfield, and hopefully create those turnovers the same way he was able to do with the Bengals and those safeties. And a couple of them that he coached ended up going to the Pro Bowl because of those things. So if we can have Shiloh with a Pro Bowl type year in college football, and whoever else end up being that safety back there next to him, if they can have those Pro Bowl type years, that'd be huge. Matter of fact, who do you think that safety will be next to Shiloh Sanders back there?
Yeah, I would guess, especially with Trevor being up, I think it's probably Cam, and Craig, I would guess. Those are the two guys I would pencil in as the starters right now. And, Cam, wasn't a starter at the start of the year last year. Miles Slusher was that guy. And then Slusher gets hurt at the end of that TCU game. And Cam comes in and sort of, Wally pipped him, Slusher got hurt. And Cam gets in there and didn't really give up that spot. I mean, he played really well and made some big plays for the Buffs. And so he's just a gamer. He's sort of an undersized safety, not the prototype size, but he just makes plays. And so I like him back there. And I think those are gonna be the two guys back there.
I've seen guys like that before have long careers. Bob Sanders, Earl Thomas, Troy Polamalu, and probably a couple of others that I'm forgetting back there. So shouts out to Cam, and Craig. Hopefully he can have another big year this year and elevate on to the next level. I want to see him on the next level.
And a guy we've talked about before, Jaden Milner-Jones is going to be in there too. He's injured right now, but he'll be fine by the fall. There's safety depth. They lost Slusher this week. He went into the portal. And you hate to see a good player leave, but that's one spot. That's one of the few spots on this team that I'd say, okay, you can lose a safety because you got plenty of guys there, even though he's a good player. So I feel good about that safety spot, even without Slush.
Yeah, me too. And with Slush gone, Herman Smith III coming in, playing well, looking good. And a couple of other, we got a big fella as far as additions go. Just talking about guys that were lost. We got an addition coming over from my neck of the woods, like I like to say, where I played out in Austria with the big fella, Yaya Atia, a.k.a. the Bulldozer, 6'4", 330, coming over from London by way of Egypt, Austria to the NFL Academy. I saw you made an article saying another developmental piece for the offensive line for Colorado. I actually, that's a great statement, I feel like, because it is a developmental piece coming from overseas to learn the game. Any more you want to add about Big Yaya?
Yeah, and just a guy that, that's what I was told, when they added him. It's like, hey, we love the developmental piece here. And, 6'4", 330 pounds. Yeah, take that. Yeah, this is a guy that, has probably, I'm sure he, obviously he's worked out, but has not been in a college strength and conditioning program. And so you get him, Maurice Sims say, hey, see what you can do with this guy, with that 6'4", 330 frame. He's going to develop that. And that's a guy that I don't think we'll see this year, but, down the road and maybe by the end of the year, if you have some injuries, like maybe that kid's ready to go. But you take a chance on 6'4", 330, and see what you can do with it.
Definitely. And I can tell you from my experience playing over there, he played with the Austrian national team, which is the team that they put together from all of the Austrian football players there that are Austrian born. They get to play on that national team, and those are the better players there. When I went out there, of course, I went with the attitude of I'm the big bad American football player. They don't play football here. Then you get out there, you realize, damn, they have big 6'4", 340 guys also who can play. They just don't have the total knowledge of the game. Well,
Yeah.
if you rewind, when we had Big George Hageman on here, who ended up playing with the Dallas Cowboys, he made a statement saying that he didn't start playing football until his 11th grade year.
Yeah.
So what is that? 17 years old, so to speak, or whatever.
Right.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like these guys coming from overseas, maybe in the same position like a George Hageman. A lot of them have the size and skill. They just need a little bit of development, and once they get that, who knows where they can go. Shouts out to the big left tackle for the Eagles. I think Jordan, I don't want to mess his last name up, but I think it's Maralaga. He came over from Australia or New Zealand playing, rugby football, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Big fella, athletic, smart enough to understand, just need to learn the game, and now he's a Pro Bowler. So.
Yeah, and he's a guy. I love the pickup. I think that it is. Everybody wants to see the 5 stars and the 4 stars, things like that. But there are times you gotta look for a diamond in the rough, and sometimes you hit with those guys. And he's a guy that, again, you take that size. He's only played a year and a half of football, and so yeah, you love the potential on the upside.
Exactly. So I love the potential and the upside of our premium primetime Buff Talk right here on the BuffTime Podcast with Brian and Chico. This is us coming together once again, long-time Buff coverage with Brian and long-time Prime coverage with me, and we're bringing it together right here.
I love it.
To discuss it. So you want to leave everybody with some, Brian, before we go? Let them know where to find you at, how they can find you.
Yeah, just the Twitter handle there, up at the top of the page, and buffzone.com for all of our coverage, and not only football, but a lot of basketball and other sports as well. If you want to learn about those sports as well, but just looking forward to doing this more often and chatting Buffs with you, and a couple more weeks of spring ball, so we'll be doing this a lot over the last couple of weeks, and then probably over the summer a little bit as transfer additions come, and maybe some guys leave as well as we get ready for the season coming up. It's gonna be here before we know it, and so I'm kind of excited for that.
Exactly. So stay tuned. Next time we get on, we're going to talk about more positions, and of course, primetime weekend coming up, and all things Coach Prime and Colorado Buff Talk. All right. Let us know what you think. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, all the other good stuff. We're going to be up and about it here. Peace and military.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. Thanks once again.